following chapters are included in the Telema Press edition of Dream Yoga, a collection of writings by Samael on Weor, concerning how to awaken the consciousness in the internal world. The print edition of this book can be found in major bookstores such as Amazon.com or from GnosticStore.org. Chapter 1. The Awakening of Consciousness. It is necessary to know that humanity lives with its consciousness asleep. People work asleep. People walk through the streets asleep. People live and die asleep. When we come to the conclusion that the entire world lives asleep, then we comprehend the necessity of awakening. We need the awakening of the consciousness. We want the awakening of the consciousness. Fascination. The profound sleep in which humanity lives is caused by fascination. People are fascinated by everything in life. People forget themselves because they are fascinated. The drunkard in the bar is fascinated with the alcohol, the place, the pleasures, his friends, and the women. The vain woman in front of a mirror is fascinated with her own glamour. The rich, avaricious person is fascinated with money and possessions. The honest worker in the factory is fascinated with the hard work. The father of the family is fascinated with his children. All human beings are fascinated and sleep profoundly. When driving a car, we are astonished when we see people dashing across the roads and streets without paying attention to the danger of the running cars. Others willfully throw themselves under the wheels of cars. Poor people. They walk asleep. They look like sleepwalkers. They walk asleep, endangering their own lives. Any clairvoyant can see their dreams. People dream with all that keeps them fascinated. Sleep. During the physical body's sleep, the ego escapes from it. This departure of the ego is necessary so that the vital body can repair the physical body. However, in the internal worlds, we can asseverate that the ego takes its dreams into the internal worlds. Thus, while in the internal worlds, the ego occupies itself with the same things which kept it fascinated in the physical world. Therefore, during a sound sleep, we see the carpenter in his carpentry shop, the policeman guarding the streets, the barber in his barber shop, the blacksmith at his forge, the drunkard in the tavern or bar, the prostitute in the house of pleasures absorbed in lust, etc. All these people live in the internal worlds as if they were in the physical world. Normally, not a single living being during his sleep has the occurrence to ask himself whether he is in the physical or astral world. However, those who have asked themselves such a question during sleep have awoken in the internal worlds. Then, with amazement, they have been able to study all the marvels of the superior worlds. It is only possible for us to ask such a question of ourselves in the superior worlds during those hours given over to sleep, if we become accustomed to asking ourselves this question from moment to moment during the so-called vigil state. Evidently, during our sleep we repeat everything that we do during the day. Therefore, if during the day we accustom ourselves to asking this question, then during our nocturnal sleep, while being outside of the body, we, consequently, will repeat the same question to ourselves. Thus, the outcome will be the awakening of the consciousness. Remembering oneself. The human being in his fascinated trance does not remember his self. We must self-remember ourselves from moment to moment. We need to self-remember ourselves in the presence of every representation that could fascinate us. Let us hold ourselves while in front of any representation and ask ourselves, where am I? Am I in the physical plane? Am I in the astral plane? Then give a little jump with the intention of floating within the surrounding atmosphere. It is logical that if you float, it is because you are outside the physical body. Thus, the outcome will be the awakening of consciousness. The purpose of asking this question at every instant, at every moment, is with the intention of engraving it within the subconsciousness, so that it may manifest later during the hours given to sleep, hours when the ego is really outside the physical body. You must know that in the astral plane, things appear just as here in this physical plane. This is why during sleep and after death, people see everything there in a form very similar to this physical world. This is why they do not even suspect that they are outside their physical body. Therefore, no dead person ever believes himself to have died, because he is fascinated and profoundly asleep. If the dead had made a practice of remembering themselves from moment to moment when they were alive, if they had struggled against the fascination of the things of the world, the outcome would have been the awakening of their consciousness. They would not dream. They would walk in the internal worlds with awakened consciousness. Whosoever awakens the consciousness can study during the hours of sleep all the marvels of the superior worlds. Whosoever awakens the consciousness lives in the superior worlds as a totally awakened citizen of the cosmos. One then coexists with the great hierophants of the White Lodge. Whosoever awakens the consciousness can no longer dream, here in this physical plane or in the internal worlds. Whosoever awakens the consciousness stops dreaming. Whosoever awakens the consciousness becomes a competent investigator of the superior worlds. Whosoever awakens consciousness is an illuminated one. Whosoever awakens the consciousness can study at the feet of the Master. Whosoever awakens the consciousness can talk familiarly with the gods who initiated the dawn of creation. Whosoever awakens the consciousness can remember his innumerable reincarnations. Whosoever awakens the consciousness can consciously attend his own cosmic initiations. Whosoever awakens the consciousness can study in the temples of the Great White Lodge. Whosoever awakens the consciousness can know in the superior worlds about the evolution of his kundalini. Every perfect matrimony must awaken the consciousness in order to receive guidance and direction from the White Lodge. In the superior worlds, the masters will wisely guide all those who really love one another. In the superior worlds, the masters give to each one that which one needs for his internal development. Complementary practice. Every Gnostic student, after waking up from their normal sleep, must perform a retrospective exercise based on the process of their sleep, in order to remember all those places they visited during the hours of sleep. We already know that the ego travels a great deal. It goes towards where we have physically been, repeating all that which we have seen and heard. The masters instruct their disciples when they are out of the physical body. Therefore, it is urgent to know how to profoundly meditate, and then practice what we have learned during the hours of sleep. It is necessary not to physically move at the time of waking up, because with the movement, the astral body is agitated and the memories are lost. It is urgent to combine the retrospective exercises with the following mantras. Raum Gaum. Each word is divided into 2 syllables. One must accentuate the vowel O. These mantras are for the student what dynamite is for the miner. Thus, as the miner opens his way through the bowels of the earth with the aid of dynamite, similarly, the student also opens his way into the memories of his subconsciousness with the aid of these mantras. Patience and tenacity. The Gnostic student must be infinitely patient and tenacious, because powers cost a great deal. Nothing is given to us for free. Everything has a price. These studies are not for inconsistent people, nor for people of fragile will. These studies demand infinite faith. Skeptical people must not come to our studies, because occult science is very demanding. The skeptics fail totally. Thus, skeptical people will not succeed in entering the heavenly Jerusalem. Dream Yoga Chapter 2, on Dreams. Gnosis teaches that the modern decadent psychology of the Western Hemisphere is ignorant of the various kinds of dreams that exist. Dreams have a diverse and specific quality, for they are closely related to each of the psychic centers of the human body. In fact, we do not exaggerate when we state that most dreams are linked to the motor instinctive center. That is, they are the echoes of everything we see during the day, simple sensations and motions, a mere astral repetition of our daily life. Some experiences of an emotional type, such as fear, which harms humanity so much, usually fit in those chaotic dreams of the motor instinctive centers as well. There are then emotional, sexual, intellectual, motor, and instinctive dreams. The more important dreams, the inner experiences of the being, are associated with the two centers, the superior emotional and the superior intellectual. Dreams related to the two superior centers are certainly interesting. Their main feature is what we could call a dramatic array. Now then, if we think of the ray of creation, the superior and inferior centers, and the influences descending through the sided cosmic ray, we must admit that some luminous vibrations appear. These intend to heal us, to inform us about the state in which we are, and more. It becomes useful to receive messages and to be in contact with the Aztec, Mayan, Toltec, Egyptian, and Greek adepts. It is marvelous as well to have intimate dialogue with the highest diverse parts of our being. The superior centers are fully developed in us, and they send us messages which we must learn to consciously grasp. In this chapter, those select people who have had a moment of self-remembrance, in which they saw a common thing or person in a totally different way, will not be surprised if I tell them that such moments have the same quality as one of those rare and strange dreams related to the two superior emotional and intellectual centers. The meaning of such transcendental dreams matches undoubtedly to the same level of realization in oneself of the ray of creation, and in particular, the lateral octave of the sun. The beginning of our realization of the deep significance of this specific type of dream is the signal that some forces struggle to awaken, heal, or cure us. Each of us is a mathematical point in space that is used as a vehicle by determined sums of values, black or white. Death is a subtraction of fractions. Once the mathematical operation is completed, the only thing left are the values, good or bad. In accordance with the law of the eternal return, it is certain that the values return, they are re-embodied. If a man starts taking into account more consciously the small cycle of recurring events of his personal life, he will be able to verify directly through mystical experience that in daily sleep the same mathematical operation of death is always repeated. In the absence of the physical body during normal sleep, the values merge into the astral light and attract or repel each other in accordance with the law of universal magnetization. The return to the vigil state rightfully implies the return of the values to the interior of the physical body. Extraordinarily, people think that they only interrelate with the external world. Gnosis teaches us that we interrelate with an inner world, which is invisible to the physical ordinary senses, but visible to clairvoyance. This inner invisible world is much wider, and it contains many more interesting things than the external world, where the 5 windows of the senses are always opened. Many dreams relate to the place where we are in the inner invisible world, from which the diverse circumstances of life come forth. The language of dreams is accurately comparable to the language of parables. Those who interpret everything literally think that the sower of the Christic gospel went to sow, and that the seeds fell on rocks, and so on. But they do not understand the sense of the parable, because it belongs to the symbolic language of the superior emotional center. Needless to say here, that any dream, as absurd or incoherent as it may be, has some significance, for it indicates not only the psychic center to which it is associated, but also the psychological status of such a center. Many penitent people, who presume to be chaste, failed in the sexual center, and had a nocturnal pollution when they were submitted to trials in the internal world. In the perfect adept, the 5 psychic centers, intellectual, emotional, motor, instinctive, and sexual, function in full harmony with the infinite. What is our mental activity during sleep? What emotions move or shatter us? What are our activities outside the physical body? What instinctive sensations predominate? Have we considered our sexual states during sleep? We must be sincere with ourselves. Plato rightfully said, "A man is known by his dreams." The matter of the erroneous work of the centers is a topic that demands a lifetime of study, by way of the observation of oneself in action, and of the rigorous examination of dreams. It is not possible to achieve the understanding of the centers and their correct or incorrect function in an instant. We need infinite patience. All of life unfolds as a function of the centers and is controlled by them. Our thoughts, ideas, feelings, hopes, fears, love, hatred, deeds, sensations, pleasure, satisfactions, frustrations, and so on are found in the centers. The discovery of some inhuman element in any one of the centers must be the strongest motive for the esoteric work. Any psychological defect must be previously understood by way of the technique of meditation before proceeding to its elimination. The extirpation, eradication, or elimination of any undesirable element is only possible by invoking Tonatzin's aid, our Divine Mother Kundalini, a variation of our own being, or particular fohat of each of us. This is how we die from moment to moment. Only death brings forth what is new. Influences of all kinds reach us in the levels of beings and things. If we have understood the ray of creation, we will also acknowledge that in any instant of life, influences, which are of various qualities, reach us. We must always be aware that there are superior influences that act upon us and are recorded by our psychic system. If we are nevertheless attached to our senses, and we do not pay full attention to our inner life, we will not be able to perceive these influences. Chapter 3. Dream Yoga Discipline. Those candidates who sincerely long for a mystical direct experience must unquestionably begin with the Dream Yoga discipline. The Gnostic must be very demanding with himself, and learn to create favorable conditions to remember and understand all those inner experiences that always occur during sleep. Before retiring to your bed at the end of your daily routine, it is advisable to pay attention to the state you are in. Devotees whose circumstances make them lead a sedentary life will gain a lot if before going to bed they have a short but very lively walk outdoors. A walk will relax the muscles. I must clarify, however, that we must never abuse physical exercises. We need to live in harmony. Supper, or the final meal of the day, must be light and free of heavy or stimulating foods. Foods that keep us awake or alter our sleep should be avoided. The highest way of thinking is not thinking. When the mind is quiet and silent, free of daily routine and mundane anxiety, it is then in a state that is 100% favorable for the dream yoga practice. When the superior emotional center is actually working, the thinking process stops, at least for a brief moment. Evidently, the sighted center is activated with Dionysian intoxication. Such rapture is possible when listening with infinite devotion to the delightful symphonies of Wagner, Mozart, Chopin, and others. Beethoven's music is especially extraordinary because it makes the superior emotional center vibrate intensely. The sincere Gnostic finds in it a vast field for mystical exploration, for it is not music of form, but of archetypal, ineffable ideas. Every note has a meaning. Every pause is a superior emotion. Beethoven, when feeling the cruel rigors and trials of the spiritual night, instead of failing as many candidates did, opened the eyes of his intuition to the mysterious supernatural, the spiritual side of nature, to that region where angelic kings of these universal creations, Tlaloc, Ehekatl, Huehuetirl, etc., live. Observe the musician-philosopher all along his exemplary existence. On top of his table, he always had in plain view his divine mother Kundalini, the ineffable Neith, Anahuac's Tonantzin, or the supreme Egyptian Isis. It is said that the great master had an inscription at the base of that adorable sculpture, written with his own hand, that mysteriously asserted, "I am she who has been, is, and will be. No mortal has lifted my veil." Revolutionary and inner progress becomes impossible without the immediate aid of our Divine Mother, Tonantzin. Grateful children must love their mothers. Beethoven loved his greatly. Outside the physical body, during the hours of sleep, the soul can talk to her Divine Mother. We must, however, begin with dream yoga discipline. We need to take care of the bedroom where we sleep. It must be pleasantly decorated. The colors best suited for the goal we seek, in spite of what other authors recommend, are precisely the three primary hues, blue, yellow, and red. The three basic colors constantly correspond to the three primary forces of nature, the holy Triamatsikamno, holy affirmation, holy negation, and holy conciliation. Let us remember that the three original forces of this great creation always crystallize in the positive, negative, and neutral forms. The causa causorum of the holy Triamatsikamno is found hidden in the active element Okidanok. The latter, in and of itself, is only the emanation of the sacred solar absolute. Obviously, if we reject the three fundamental colors, having given the above explanations, we become, by simple logical deduction, foolish. Dream yoga is extraordinary, marvelous, and formidable. It is, however, very demanding. The bedroom has to be perfumed and ventilated, but not pervaded with the cold night temperature. After undergoing detailed and careful preparation of himself for bed and of the room where he will sleep, a Gnostic must take care of his bed. If we observe any compass, we can see that the needle always points to the north. It is then possible to consciously take advantage of the planet's magnetic current, which always flows from south to north. A bed should be placed in such a way that the head is facing north. In this way, we can intelligently use the magnetic current indicated by the needle. The mattress should be neither too hard nor too soft. This means that its texture must in no way affect the psychic processes of the sleeping person. Squeaking bed springs or a base that cracks with every small movement of the body are serious obstacles for these practices. A pad or notebook and a pencil should be placed under the pillow so that they can be easily found even in the dark. Bedclothes must be fresh and clean. The pillowcase must be scented with our favorite perfume. After having met these requirements, the ascetic Gnostic will be ready for the second stage of this esoteric discipline. He will get into bed, and having turned off all the lights, will lay on his back with his eyes closed and place both hands on his solar plexus. He will be totally quiet for some time, and once he is completely relaxed physically as well as mentally, he will concentrate on Morpheus, the god of sleep. Unquestionably, each part of our real being has specific tasks. It is precisely Morpheus, do not confuse with Orpheus, who is in charge of training us in the mysteries of sleep. It is impossible to trace a layout of our being. Nevertheless, all of the spiritual, isolated parts of the being want to achieve absolute perfection in their tasks. Morpheus enjoys this unique opportunity we provide when we concentrate on him. We must know how to supplicate and to have faith. We have to ask Morpheus to teach us and to awaken us in the suprasensitive worlds. By this time, the esoterist Gnostic feels a very special somnolence, and he then adopts the lion posture. Lying on his right side, with his head pointing north, he moves his legs slowly so that his knees are bent. In this posture, the left leg rests on top of the right one. He then places his right cheek on his right palm and lets his left arm rest on the left leg. When one wakes up, one should not move, because any movement shakes up our values, and then the memory of our dreams is lost. A retrospective exercise is needed in those moments when we want to remember our dreams. The Gnostic has to take notes, carefully, of all the details of his dream or dreams in the notebook or pad which he placed under his pillow. In this way, he will be able to have a detailed record of his inner progress in dream yoga. Even if there are only vague fragments of the dream or dreams in our memory, these must be thoroughly recorded. When nothing is left in the memory, the retrospective exercise must be based on the first thought we had at the moment we awakened. That thought, obviously, relates to the last dream. We must point out that the retrospective exercise should start before completely coming back to the vigil state, when we are still drowsy, to try to follow the dream sequence. The practice of that exercise always starts with the last image that we had, moments before coming back to the vigil state. We will terminate this chapter with the serious statement that it is not possible to go beyond this stage of the dream yoga discipline unless we have obtained the perfect memory of our dream experiences. Special nourishment to develop the power of the memory. Prepare your breakfast with acid fruits and ground almonds, along with honey. In this way, you will provide the brain with the necessary atoms for the memory. Chapter 4. Tantric Dream. We should review our pad or notebook every month in order to verify the gradual progression of our dream memory. Any possibility of forgetting a dream must be eliminated. We cannot continue further with practices unless we have achieved perfect memory. Of particular interest are those dreams which seem to come from past centuries, or that unfold in environments totally unrelated to the vigil existence of the dreamer.
One must be in a watchful, perceptive, or alert anew state, and pay attention to the study of details, which includes specific matters, conversations, meetings, temples, or unusual activities which relate to other people. Once the total development of the dream memory is achieved, and any possibility of lack of memory is eliminated, the symbolism process will open the way to revelation. We must seek the basic science of interpretation of dreams in the law of philosophical analogies, the law of the opposite analogies, and the law of correspondences and numerology. The astral images, reflected in the magical mirror of imagination, can never be translated literally, for these are only the symbolic representation of archetypal ideas. They must be utilized in the same way as a mathematician uses algebraic symbols. Furthermore, we can say that such ideas come down from the pure world of the spirit. The archetypal ideas descending from the being are marvelous, for they inform us about the psychological status of any center of the human machine, about esoteric or intimate matters, or about possible successes or dangers, etc. These are always wrapped in the marvelous cover of symbolism. It is possible to unveil any of the astral symbols, scenes, or figures with the goal of taking out their essential ideas, only by means of the correlative and logical meditation of the being. On reaching this stage of dream yoga discipline, it is indispensable to approach the tantric aspect of the matter. Ancient wisdom teaches that Tonantzin, Devi Kundalini, our divine, cosmic, individual mother, each of us has our own, can take any form, for she is the origin of all forms. Therefore, the Gnostic should meditate upon her before falling asleep. The candidate will start his dreaming process by repeating daily with great faith the following prayer: Tonantzin, te teoinan, my mother, come to me, come to me. According to tantric science, if the Gnostic persists with this practice, sooner or later, an initiator element will come forth from the changing and formless expressions of his dreams. As long as this initiator has not been totally identified, it is indispensable to continue recording dreams on the pad or notebook. The study and profound analysis of every recorded dream becomes indispensable in tantric dream esoteric discipline. This didactic progression will lead us to the discovery of the initiator or unifier element of dreams. The sincere Gnostic who reaches this stage of tantric discipline is, for this reason, ready for the next step, which will be the topic of our next chapter. Chapter 5. The Return Practice. When the beginner has successfully performed all Gnostic exercises related to tantric dreams, he is clearly ready for the return practice. In the previous chapter, we mentioned the initiator element that comes forth as if by magic from within the changing and formless expressions of dreams. Some people, who are highly psychic, refined, or susceptible to impressions, have always possessed in themselves the initiator element. These people are characterized by the continuous repetition of the same dream. These psychics periodically relive various scenes or constantly see in their dream experience a creature or a symbol. Every time the candidate wakes up from ordinary sleep and remembers the initiator element, be it a symbol, a sound, a color, a person, etc., he keeps his eyes closed and goes on with the visualization of that familiar image. He will then try to go back to sleep to continue the same dream. In other words, the aspirant tries to be conscious of his own dream. That is why he intentionally goes on with it, but carries it to the vigil state in full lucidity and self-control. Hence, he becomes a spectator and actor of a dream, with the advantage, certainly not insignificant, of being able to abandon the scene at will in order to move freely in the astral world. Then, the aspirant, free of the limitations of the flesh, outside the physical body, will have discarded his old familiar environment and penetrated a universe ruled by different laws. The discipline of the dream state of Tantric Buddhists methodically leads us to the awakening of our consciousness. Gnostics can awaken to the real state of illumination only through the understanding and elimination of dreams. Sacred scriptures from Hindustan solemnly assert that the whole world is Brahma's dream. Having this Hindu postulate as a base, let us emphasize that when Brahma awakens, his dream ends. As long as the aspirant does not achieve the radical dissolution not only of dreams, but of their psychological generators as well, absolute awakening is impossible. The definitive awakening of the consciousness is possible only by means of a radical transformation. The four Christic Gospels insist on the necessity of awakening. Unfortunately, people are still sleeping. Quetzalcoatl, the Mexican Christ, was certainly a man who was 100% awakened. The multiplicity of his attributes points to us precisely the antiquity of his cult and the profound veneration he received in Mesoamerica. The holy gods of Anahuac are perfect men in the strictest sense of the word. They are absolutely awakened. Those beings eradicated even the possibility of dreams from their psyche. Tlaloc, he who makes sprouting, the god of the rain and lightning, being a god, is also an awakened man who had to eliminate from his psyche not only dreams, but also all possibilities of dreaming. He is the principal sacred individual of the ancient Olmec culture. He is always depicted with the tiger serpent's mask in colossal axes and various jade figures. Tezcatlipoca and Huitzilopochtli, beings of the fire, living representations of night and day, are also awakened men, beings who went beyond their dreams. Outside his physical body, an awakened individual can invoke the holy gods of the Aztecs, Mayans, Zapotecs, Toltecs, and others. The gods of the Borgia, Bourbon, and other codices come to help those who awaken. By means of the help of the holy gods, the awakened person can study the secret doctrine of Anahuac in the astral light. Chapter 6. The Four Blessings. In the last chapter, we referred extensively to the initiator element of dreams. Obviously, we only lack the ability to use it. When the Gnostic has kept a record of his dreams, he unquestionably discovers a dream that recurs. This, among other reasons, certainly justifies writing all dreams in his notebook or pad. That recurring dream experience is the initiator element, which, wisely used, leads us to the awakening of the consciousness. Every time the mystic lies on his bed, goes to sleep, and meditates at will on the initiator element, the result is immediate. Usually, the anchorite relives such dreams consciously and is able to leave the scene at will, to travel in the suprasensible worlds. Any dream can be used for such purposes when we actually know the technique. Whoever awakens from a dream can continue with it intentionally if desiring to do so. In this case, he must go back to sleep and relive that dream experience with imagination. We must not imagine that we are imagining. Fundamentally, we should relive the dream in its full and crude reality. Repeating the dream intentionally is the first step towards the awakening of the consciousness. The voluntary separation from the dream in plain action is the second step. Some aspirants take the first step, but they lack the strength to take the second one. Such people can and should help themselves by means of the technique of meditation. By making serious decisions, those devotees will practice meditation before going to sleep. The motive of concentration and reflection in their inner and deep meditation will be, in this case, their inner situation. In this practice, the mystic, in sorrow, feeling sincere emotion, will invoke his divine mother, Tonat Zin, Devi Kundalini. Shedding tears of pain, the ascetic Gnostic will lament his state of unconsciousness and will implore for help, beseeching his divine mother for strength to detach himself at will from any dream. The goal this dream discipline seeks is to prepare the disciple to clearly recognize the 4 blessings that manifest in the dream experience. This esoteric discipline is certainly only for very serious people, for it demands infinite patience and enormous inner super efforts. A lot has been said in the Orient about the 4 lights of the dream state. Let us study this matter. The first one is called the revealing light. It is written in gold letters in the Book of Life that this is perceived just before or during the first hours of sleep. Speaking frankly and to the point, let us point out that as sleep becomes deeper, the undesirable melding of residual impressions and the usual train of discriminatory thoughts fortunately dissolve slowly. In this stage of sleep, the second illumination progressively shows. This is known in Asia by the marvelous name of increasing light. The ascetic Gnostic, by means of the extraordinary tantric dream discipline, gets beyond this stage and apprehends the 2 remaining lights. The full experience of the crude reality of practical life in the superior worlds of cosmic consciousness grants the 3rd light, the immediate realization. The 4th light is that of the inner profound illumination, and it comes to us as if by enchantment in plain mystical experience. Here in the 4th degree of the void dwells the child of the clear mother light, states a Tibetan treatise. Frankly speaking, I assert that the tantric dream discipline is in fact an esoteric preparation for that final dream that we call death. Having died many times at night, the anchorite Gnostic who has consciously apprehended the 4 blessings, which present themselves in the dreaming experience, passes to the post-mortem state when he dies with the same ease that he willingly gets into the world of dreams. Outside his physical body, the Gnostic can consciously verify by himself the fate reserved to the souls beyond death. If every night, by means of the tantric dream discipline, the esoterist can consciously die and penetrate into the world of the dead, he will then be able as well to study the ritual of life and death while the officiant arrives. After he visited the infernos, where he saw in horror the fate of the lost souls, Hermes became acquainted with unknown facts. "Watch to that side," Osiris tells Hermes. "Do you see that hive of souls who try to climb up to the lunar region? Some are rushed down to the ground, just like flocks of birds under the blows of a storm. The other ones, with the strokes of their wings, reach the superior sphere, which pulls them on its rotation. Once they reach there, they recover the sight of divine things." When burying those chosen by Tlaloc, the rain god, the Aztecs placed a dried branch nearby. It was said that, when the Blessed One reached the Field of Delights, or Tlalocan, the dried branch turned green again, indicating in this way the return to a new life. Those who have not been chosen by the sun or Tlaloc fatally go to Mictlan, which is in the north, a region where the souls undergo a series of magic trials on passing through the infernal worlds. There are 9 places where the souls suffer unbearably before reaching the final rest. This reminds us in an emphatic way of the 9 infernal circles of Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy. Many are the gods and goddesses who populate the 9 Dantean circles of the Aztec Inferno. Let us remember the frightful Mictlantecuhtli and the tenebrous Mictecacuihuatl, the Lord and Lady of the Infernos, respectively, inhabitants of the 9th and deepest underground of those places. The souls who undergo the trials of the Aztec Inferno later, after the second death, enter joyfully the paradises of the elementals of nature. Unquestionably, those souls who neither descend to the infernal worlds after death, nor ascend to the kingdom of the golden light, or to Tlaloc's paradise, or the kingdom of eternal concentration, etc., will come back or return sooner or later to a new physical body. The souls chosen by the sun, or Tlaloc, rejoice much in the superior worlds before returning to this vale of samsara. The anchorite Gnostics, after having grasped the 4 lights of dreams, can consciously visit the Tlalocan every night, or go down to the Mictlan, or contact those souls who, before returning, still live in the lunar region. Chapter 7. The Guardian Angel. The first educator of any great initiate is, by its own right, the fundamental cause of all spiritual parts of his authentic presence. Any grateful guru humbly prostrates before the first creator who gave him life. After many conscious works and voluntary sufferings, the absolute perfection achieved in the functioning of all spiritual isolated parts of our common presence is revealed before our tearful eyes. Then, the being's impulse of gratitude towards the first educator is born in us. Unquestionably, the absolute perfection of each and every isolated part of the being can be achieved only by radically dying in ourselves here and now. There are various stages of inner self-realization. Some initiates have achieved perfection in some isolated parts of their being, but they still have much work to do before reaching the absolute perfection of all parts. It would be in no way possible to portray the being. It resembles an army of innocent children. Each of them performs specific tasks. The greatest longing of all initiates is to unify all parts of the being. When one achieves the inner self-realization of the highest part of one's being, one receives the grade Ishmesh. Our Lord Quetzalcoatl, the Mexican Christ, undoubtedly developed the highest part of his own being. It should be noted that Xolotl, the Nahua Lucifer, is also one of our own being's isolated parts. The elemental gods of nature, such as Huehueteotl, Tlaloc, Ehecatl, Chalchiutlicue, Tlaloc's Genevieve, Xochiquetzal, the goddess of flowers, etc., assist the initiate in his elemental magic operations, provided that there is correct behavior. Nevertheless, we should not forget our elemental intercessor, the elemental magician in each of us, who can invoke the elemental gods of nature and perform prodigies. This is unquestionably another one of the being's isolated parts. The 3 goddesses that represent our Divine Mother, who are actually only 3 unfoldings of the same divinity, variations or offshoots of our own being, are Tonantzin Coatlicue and Tlazolteotl. Our own being has many isolated parts. We are amazed when we behold the Lion of the Law, the 2 genii who take note of our good and bad deeds, the karmic police, a part of our being as well, the all-merciful, the compassionate one, our united Father-Mother, and the guardian angel. The flaming powers of the guardian angel are truly extraordinary, marvelous, and extremely divine. I know what the guardian angel is from purely Gnostic sources, secretly kept in monasteries of initiation. These bear no resemblance to common pseudo-Christianity and pseudo-occultism, which are accessible to the general public. On reaching the very mysterious field of the history and the life of the jinns, we have discovered not only the Chapultepec temple in Mexico and the people from the fourth vertical, but also, to our amazement, the power of the guardian angel and his relationship with all of this. Let us never forget Padre Prado and Bernal Diaz del Castillo, who together observed with delight the Anahuac priests in jinn states. The anchorites floated delightfully through the air and went from Cholula to the Templo Mayor. This happened every day at sunset. Never in their nocturnal walks did the Sais disciples in the delta of the Nile, or Zarathustra's followers in the Persian plateau, or those who meditated in Bello's tower in Babylonia, have more majestic horizons than the ones that are observed by those who seriously persevere in tantric dream discipline. Outside his physical body, the Gnostic anchorite can consciously, if he wills it, invoke an isolated part of his own being, which is defined in practical esotericism as the guardian angel. Unquestionably, the ineffable will heed his call. Transparent serenity, limitless calm, or ecstatic happiness, like that which is experienced by the soul when breaking the bonds of matter and the world, is what we feel in such delightful moments. You can then, dear reader, deduce the outcome. Magical services a la Lohengrin can always be received. If in such rapturous moments we ask of the guardian angel the favor of removing our body, which is sleeping in bed where we left it, and bringing it to us, the magical phenomena will take place successfully. We can sense that the physical body is on its way, brought by the guardian angel, when we feel a strange pressure on our psychic or astral shoulders. If we assume a receptive, open, and quiet attitude, the physical body will penetrate our interior. The tantric Gnostic, instead of returning to his physical body, consciously waits for it to come to him in order to travel to the promised land in the fourth coordinate. Later, with the help of the guardian angel, the Gnostic can safely go back home to bed. The venerable masters of the occult fraternity travel with their physical bodies in the fourth vertical, and can leave the fourth vertical at any point they wish. This means that the resurrected masters of the superior order have the luxury of transporting themselves without modern transportation systems, boats, airplanes, or cars. Not a trivial matter. In ancient times, the use of criticism, analogy, and symbology were the living core of the Alexandrian school of the Philheletians, or truth lovers, a 6th century academy of synthesis founded by Ammonios, the great autodidact and eclectic, and Plotinus, Plato's follower. Throughout the centuries, the great initiatic value of these procedures and the doctrinal principles of Egypt, Mexico, Peru, China, Tibet, Persia, and India helped many initiates orient themselves in the path of the razor's edge. Ammonios Sakas's Androgynea is remarkable. It is an excellent golden book. Self-aggrandizement is the biggest error that many modern pseudo-esoterists and pseudo-occultists have. They love themselves so much, and they yearn for the evolution of the misery they carry within. They want to move on and long for the extension of that which in no way deserves either perfection or perpetuation. Those people with subjective psyches believe themselves to be rich, powerful, and illuminated. They covet a splendid position in the beyond. In reality, they know nothing about themselves. Lamentably, they are ignorant of their own impotence, nothingness, shamelessness, misadventures, and psychological misery and nakedness. We Gnostics do not yearn to be better or worse. We only want to die in ourselves here and now. When we have the dogma of evolution as the foundation of our most cherished yearnings, our point of departure is false. We, the penitents of the rocky path that leads to final liberation, are not interested in evolution. We know we are miserable and crippled, and our own evolution would be useless. We prefer supreme death. Only death brings forth what is new. Why should we struggle for the evolution and progression of our own misfortune? It is better to die. If the seed does not die, the plant cannot sprout. When death is absolute, that which will be born will also be absolute. Total annihilation of the self, the radical dissolution of the most loved which we carry within, the final disintegration of our best desires, thoughts, feelings, passions, resentments, sorrows, emotions, yearnings, hatred, likings, jealousy, revenge, anger, affections, attachments, passion, lust, is urgent and undelayable. It cannot be postponed. In this way, the being's flame, which is always new and does not belong to time, can come forth. The conception we have of the being is not the being. Any intellectual concept we have created about the being is not the being. Our opinion of the being is not the being. The being is the being, and the reason for the being to be is to be himself. Fear of absolute death is an obstacle to the realization of radical change. Each of us has a mistaken creation in our interior. It is essential to destroy what is false so that a new creation can come forth. We would never try to promote the evolution of falseness. We prefer Buddhist annihilation. From the black and horrifying sepulchral grave of the abyss arise the diverse flaming parts of the being. The guardian angel is one of those many isolated parts. Those who really know the mysteries of the Templars, which are a marvelous reflection of Bacchian, Eleusinian, and Pythagorean mysteries, by no means wish to carry on their inner misery. We ought to return to the original point of departure. We must go back to the primitive darkness of the not being and chaos, so that light can be born and a new creation can come forth in our interior. Instead of fearing total annihilation, we should learn how to love and fall into the arms of our blessed goddess, Mother Death.